Welcome, Ian. Thanks for agreeing to come and do the Sysi-calls podcast with us. And we're delighted to have you on. I've been watching you from afar, all the retail safaris and all the things you do on LinkedIn, all that proactive stuff. So we're really delighted to have you on today.
Thank you, James. It's a pleasure to be invited.
No problem. And just to introduce you, so you're Ian Scott. You're one of Rethink Retail's top 100 influencers. So well done to you.
Thank you.
You've spent most of your career in retail, and I guess your job is to work with the retailers to find out how they can be, better, and how you pour more gasoline on the good stuff that they're doing.
Yes, I call myself a retail consultant, and I love the vagueness of that title. It allows me to sort of push off into different areas, and I do love the variety of work that's sort of built up in the last few years. So yes, I work with a number of brands and retailers. My primary focus is the physical space, but also how it interacts with the digital channels as well. But I love the physical store, and I have done for 10, 15 years. I think it's an amazing space. It's still responsible for 75% of all retail sales around the world. So despite the calls that physical retail is dead, it is still the major focal point, and COVID and cost of living has been driving a change in the way we use that space, and we've seen a lot of brands getting proactive. So I love doing that. As you say, I run retail safaris, take people around primarily London, but other cities as well, looking at some of the most interesting stores. I have a monthly newsletter, like a subscription service with different stories and news articles. I do audits where I go and visit stores and will assess them and analyze them. And I do a lot of work on retail trends, talking about the changes, which is translated into quite a bit of conference and event speaking, which I was never planning to do, but I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I had an opportunity to travel the world in the last sort of 9 months doing some of that as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag.
Oh, brilliant. And that's an astounding figure. 75% of the goods are still
Yeah.
bought in a bricks and mortar environment. I mean, I think a lot of people will be surprised by that. And it clearly shows that the high street's a long way from dead. But there are some challenges. And I know one of the things that you've talked about, I've seen you talking about symbiotic retail. And, I
Yeah.
just wondered if you'd maybe tell people a little bit about how that works.
Certainly. I mean, we're mostly familiar with the phrase omni-channel, which is reference to the different touch points and different channels. So that could be a physical store, a website, app, social media, events. So we're familiar with that. But in isolation, those don't work as effectively unless you consider how they work together. So I use the phrase symbiotic retail. Some people call it unified retail. But the idea is that those channels all work together for the common good. A customer will seamlessly flip across different channels. They'll open your Instagram account, they'll visit your store, they'll go on your website, they'll send you an email, and they move across those channels without consciously thinking about channels. It's why I use the phrase omnichannel in a very reserved way, because it's an internal professional marketing phrase. It's not a consumer. Consumer doesn't think omnichannel. They pick up the phone, they go in the store. They've gone omnichannel, but they're not conscious of it. So I think we need to recognize that if you have an app that works really well, it'll drive people into your store. The store will drive traffic to your website. So they work together, and that's the symbiosis. So it makes it harder to track the success of individual channels, because you may visit the store to look at something and then buy it sat on your sofa on your phone 3 months later. And how do you recognize that the store visit was the start of that journey? So it is very difficult now to track in isolation. But I think breaking down those barriers is really important. When I've posted about this on LinkedIn, some brands have gone, but how do I then itemize the success of my website on my spreadsheet? And I go, well, with all due respect, your spreadsheet's the limiting factor here. You can't just do them in isolation. And you've seen brands like Next become very proactive and embrace this. And it's no surprise to me that Next are one of the growing retail empires in the UK. Last year, their annual report, they stated that they had, I think, 195 loss-making stores. That the money in the till from those stores didn't cover the cost of it, but they were keeping them open because of online returns and click and collect. And it's a perfect example of that symbiosis. They said some of those stores may reduce in size, but they recognize the importance of that physical touch point in that location, just for the cost of their e-commerce. And they said the cost of those stores equates to 0.4% of their e-commerce business. So, and they said if we were setting up an operation for our returns and it cost zero point 0.4, we would grab it with both hands. And then on top of that, it's making sales as a standalone physical store. So that to me is a wonderful example of that symbiosis where they recognize everything is working together for the common good for not only the business, but the consumer as well.
I think there's a few, certainly a lot of points in there that I would tease out. One of them being, it's not a new thing to have marketing where it's very difficult to know where it comes from. So we've
Yeah.
been doing marketing for years and years, and people used to do yellow pages, but did they know exactly what came back from the yellow pages, right? Back in the day, did they know what came from an advert on a social media website? I guess more so now. And then the last thing I was going to say about that is, you talked about the cost of the return being, fairly low based on how they operate their stores, but it also means they can keep it all in-house as well. So
Yeah.
they have full control of the customer experience, which I
Yeah.
guess must be one of the key points of being,
Yeah.
if you want to be a symbiotic retailer, I guess you want to have control of all of those touch points because that's where the gold is.
Exactly, and Next have done this very well. You touched on returns, particularly in the fashion sector. I think free returns for online purchases impacts a third of gross profit for fashion retailers. It's a horrendous amount of money. We have what is called wardrobing, where you'll buy 4 items, only ever intending to keep one, knowing 3 are going to be returned. And the other secondary issue with fashion is some of those returns they can't resell, from a health and safety point of view or from damage and packaging repair. So some stuff goes into landfill, some then becomes second, so they have to discount it. A few brands are starting to charge a nominal fee for returns now. I personally think that's a good thing. As a consumer, I don't like it, but I recognize that returning something that someone buys and doesn't want isn't factored into the financial model of selling the product in the first place. And we as consumers, we sort of forget that if we buy something in a physical store and return it, we get in our car, we use fuel, we pay to park the car some of the times in a car park and go in the store. So even if we popped in for 10 minutes, we probably spend between £5 and £10 in real terms returning that product. But because we're not billed for that cost, in our mind, it's not a cost. So if someone then says, we're going to charge you £2 for a return, people are up in arms. I'm going, well, that's cheaper than you getting in the car and taking it back yourself. So that has to be factored in. Otherwise, the prices are going to go up. And we saw recently with Tesco's, they had a standoff with some of their suppliers. They were going to start charging, I think it was a £1.95 handling fee for e-commerce orders, for like the home delivery orders, because they were saying this is costing more. Because ironically, they're using the physical store for fulfillment. The cost price is built around someone turning up at that store and taking it away. So suddenly you have additional staff picking this, packing it, putting it into vans. Now they misplaced that because they were trying to charge their suppliers. You actually need to charge the customer for that. And that was another recognition that e-commerce has costs. It's great that you can use your stores around the country. You have local touch points, local distribution centers, but there is an additional cost to use that space to service that product, which should quite rightly be sold at the same price. You can't have an online, if you check on a website for something and go in the store and it's 10% more in the store, it annoys people. The flip side is you can't have it more expensive. I mean, there may be specific promotions that suit the purpose of selective promotional work, but generally, as I say, the customer goes across all channels. You need same price, same product, same availability, same tone of voice, ease of access. So this is one of the challenges and flip side that's coming from e-commerce. Very few grocers are making any money out of home delivery. You notice none of them are pulling in-house the fast commerce, which is an absolute fool's errand, in my opinion. Dropping everything to rush 1 pint of milk across town in 30 minutes, there's no way you can make money. And if Tesco's thought there was money in it, they'd have bought one of these delivery companies. They're keeping at arm's length. If it fails, they can turn that tap off and they keep their next day delivery in-house.
This is an opportune moment to tell you about what we do at Sysi-calls Solutions. We unify systems into one single pane of glass view. We integrate legacy, existing or proposed systems to provide powerful savings, insights and value. And best of all, we're totally system agnostic. Every device, luminaire, sensor or detector, to us it's just an asset, and we join them up together to form an ecosystem. Thanks for taking the time out, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the podcast. I guess one of the challenges of the grocer model is the actual cost of the goods. You know, there's not many big ticket items. There's lots of staples. You know, they can be very aggressively priced on the staples. So, you know, they really need to make their money over a basket of product. Whereas maybe with a retailer, they look at single sales as being enough for a basket, but would prefer to have bigger baskets. So, but on that front, I guess with skirting around the tech. So there must be some good tech that's being used in these retail environments, and there must be some that helps, and there must be maybe some that maybe is a bit of an own goal. So talk to us about that.
Well, certainly, part of that merging of the physical space, which has traditionally been analog, is not only the digital channels, but the technology that goes into stores as well. One of the first things that spring to mind is how some brands are utilizing their app to enhance the physical experience. And I've seen some lovely ideas here where Adidas, for example, have introduced a Bring It To Me feature. So you open their app and they have a QR code on the wall where you can just scan down this specific part of the feature, which is wonderful. And I'm sure you, like me, you've been in a shop where you go, can I have these in the size 9? And then you sit around for 10 minutes. The guy who comes in after you gets served before you do. And there's this horrible friction point. But what you can do is scan the shoe on the Adidas app, select your size, click Bring It To Me, and then you go off and carry on walking around the store. And particularly their Oxford Street store, I think it's 3 or 4 floors. You can go upstairs and they'll track you through your phone and bring the shoes to you where you're in another category on another floor. And to me, that is what I love about that, is it is consumer focused solution. Too much tech is introduced into retail that benefits the brand, and it clearly benefits them. You have to make it win-win. And speaking to the staff in Adidas, they go, we love this feature. There's not been a high take up of it, which is a shame, purely because they're not promoting it properly. But it's a great feature. And likewise, they have smart mirrors in the changing rooms. All the products have RFID tags. So you go in and immediately that product appears on the mirror, and you can learn about the product, the materials, the features and benefits, the different colorways. But again, they link in that Bring It To Me tech as well. So if you've got the wrong size, what we normally do is that sort of half-dressed tiptoe of shame in our socks across the floor to get the next size and run back. Again, you select the size, click Bring It To Me, and they'll bring it to you. So I love that it's so consumer focused as technology. At Nike, staying within the sports world, they'll have other features in their app that allow you to buy directly. So you can scan barcodes and learn about product. You can pay directly through the app. And if you want to try something on in their changing room, because of your history on the app, they know your size and your size is automatically waiting there. So that works as long as you haven't had a good Christmas and put on weight. But I love those because they're about making it easy for customers. And then the flip side is making it easier for employees. And there are companies like New Store that have this sort of endless aisle technology, which is all held in an iPhone. And so a member of staff, you can chat, oh, I can't find this thing that I saw on your website. They can check if it's in stock. If it's not in stock, they can find which local stores have it. So you can either choose to go to that store, they'll deliver it to the store, or they'll deliver it to your house. So you have this, all the information is in the palm of their hand, literally, and they can facilitate that sale, gather data, help you with information so that it becomes a seamless process. So, and again, about making it easier for the customer. And when you speak to the store staff about that type of technology, they love it as well because it makes their job easier. And so I love both of those sort of aspects where, you happy employees represent your brand in a much better way as well. And a lot of brands make it difficult for their employees, and you end up with bored, disgruntled staff, and that reflects badly on your business.
I think you're right. I think there's nothing greater than the true win-win win. Actually, it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the company, it's a win for the consumer, and it's a
Yes.
win for the staff as well, because we're all expected to do the best we can. So things like that are amazing. I mean, when other sports brands are available,
Yes.
but talking about the Nike one, I can remember when they first opened a store in Oxford Street,
Yeah.
and it was called Nike Town. And
Yes.
I remember going there a few days after it opened. I tell you how long ago it was if you're interested in football, because Ronaldinho was there. Um, so that put a date on it. And I remember going up to the top floor, and I wanted to buy a pair of trainers, and they had like a miniature elevator system where
Yeah.
they put the trainers in there from the stock room, and the trainers made
Yes.
their way up the building,
Very
and it
Willy
was all on,
Wonka, isn't it?
and it was all on view. And do you know what? To this day, it's probably the most fun retail experience I've ever had.
Yes. Yes, and I've seen a couple of JD Sport have a similar system. I think Asics had one in their Regent Street store, and it's a wonderful little bit of theatre that keeps people engaged in what is a very functional logistical process. And I love it when retailers add fun to overcome some of those sort of pinch points in the shopping journey as well.
So if there's some great stuff as you just talked about, which actually I was amazed by some of that stuff. I'll probably post about that Adidas thing, because I think
Mm,
I'd love to publicize that, because who doesn't like something that's so helpful? But there
yeah.
must be some bad stuff as well. There must be some tech that's been maybe used that kind of is good for the business, but maybe not so friendly for the consumer.
Yes, I mean, getting people to sign up to things for the sake of your benefit. One that always springs to mind was Zara did a virtual catwalk window. And you can imagine how cool this sounds in the marketing meeting. We'll have a plain white window, and then we'll put our QR code in the window. They scan the QR code, they download our app, then they hold their phone up, and there's a virtual catwalk. How cool is that? But the problem is they fundamentally struggle to understand that windows and people walking past your windows are it's very, very superficial contact. Only 3% of people on average will notice a shop window. They don't care. They're either looking for the next window, or they're talking to their friend, or they want to get somewhere else, or it's raining. There's a million reasons. So only 3% of people notice your window, and that you probably have 2 or 3 seconds to grab their attention. So instead of 2 or 3 seconds to glance at your window, you're asking them to stop, scan your window, download your app, hold their phone up to see what should be in the window in the first place. I tried it, and the QR code didn't work. And so you look at these sort of things going, you're fundamentally not understanding the customer journey, because at that point it's quick, superficial, glance, grab attention. A window should get you in the store. Primary role for a shop window is get in the store and then let the store do the work. So getting all that engagement, and of course they want you to download their app. That's what they want. But what's in it for the customer? I've got to spend a minute, probably 5 minutes if there's a poor internet signal, to get your app, so you're now tracking everything I'm doing and listening to what I say, because that's what apps do as well, just so I can see your window display. It's too much. So that sort of thing is the exact opposite of things like Nike and Adidas, where there's nothing in it for the customer at all, apart from the novelty of AR. And I think you need to apply AR and technology in ways that add fun and progress the process, not hinder it.
Certainly. And just sitting thinking about that scenario. I have an EV, and it reminds me of the EV market. So you buy an EV, and I've had one for 3 years now, and everywhere you go, every EV charger you stop on, you have to download their app. You often have to prepay to be able to use it. I've gone to places where I've got to download their app, but there isn't any Wi-Fi available. They don't even
Yes.
provide the Wi-Fi to do it. And I've had
Yeah.
to walk through a store and get on their Wi-Fi because there's no 5G. And I look at that and I go, imagine if you went to Tesco's and they said, you've got to download our app, then you've got to prepay, blah, 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 blah. You would just go, it's all right, I'll tell you what, I'll go somewhere else, right?
Yes.
And you absolutely would do that, because I must have 150 quid on EV apps that I never use, because you have to
Wow.
put 20 quid a time on there to be able to even energize them. And I'll
Yeah.
probably never even go back to a charger from that network. And I just
Yes.
look at it and think, or you could have put a payment on the side of it, or you could have put a QR code to an online payment like Stripe or whatever.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no reason at all for me to have to do that, except for the fact that you want to get all of my details and my money up front.
I mean, it's incredible, isn't it? Because, with good old-fashioned diesel and petrol, they measure how much you get and you pay a rate for it, and you put your card in. And it's ironic that the future of vehicles is not supported by the future of payments. And
Exactly.
the old stinky fossil fuel has managed that frictionless process. And yes, certainly paying up front and not using it all. I mean, they're turning into a bank. You're
Yeah.
lending them money, and in fact, like you said, a lot of times you're giving them money because you're never going to use it again. And I see that as a bit like the metaverse. It's not the metaverse. There are loads of people trying to create virtual worlds. It's like the VHS Betamax. What you need is either one electricity supplier to win out, or to have a unified process. I mean, because like there's only one diesel. Well, there's two,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
everyone accesses the same thing, and you have different vendors, but it's the same nozzle, it's the same payment system, it's the same type of environment. And I'm thinking that's one of the good things of fossil fuel, sort of purchase, is they've simplified that. And the problem is the EV. There's a battleground, there's a land grab at the moment, and you need to unify. It's like charging cables. Fine. EU have said everyone's using the USB-C port, and even Apple, who always do things their own way, for Europe now have to use the same thing. And it's almost like you need legislation going. You need one socket for charging. You need to just meter it, because they know how much you've taken. Why can't they just charge you for what you've taken? They know what it is. They allocate it to your account. Yeah, there's a lot of things there where you just turn around and go, this is counterintuitive. It's a huge friction point. I do a lot of driving. I do 20, 30,000 miles a year. I was going to get an EV next year. I've actually pulled back because of the confusion and the concern. I have range anxiety. Most people do. For most people, it's irrational. For me, I would do 300, 350 miles some days. And I'm going, I don't want to add another hour to my day fretting about trying to find something, having to stop and fuel. I'm already doing a 14-hour day. So, for me, I'm holding off because the industry is not presenting an appealing, simple, unified way of using this service. So for people like me, I'm going, I'll wait until you got a car that will do 400 miles, not the WLTP figure, which is way worse than the fuel consumption figures of diesel and the petrol cars, which are a little inflated. You get a car that claims 350 miles and they go, well, it actually does 240, unless it's cold, and then it only does 200. And by the way, you're only supposed to charge the battery 80% for longevity. So that actually it's 180 miles. So you're actually driving realistically in winter half the mileage that they claim. And I'm going, I can't live my life like that. So it's a real challenge, I think.
So what kind of tech do you like? What's the kind of tech that you couldn't live without?
Well, to be honest, I mean, the very simple thing for me is my phone, which sounds a glib thing to say, but my phone is a camera that makes phone calls rather than our phone. I travel around the world photographing stores. On average, I think I was in London yesterday. I took 300 photographs. I walked the whole length of Oxford Street. I went around a bit around Regent Street. Went down to Piccadilly. Visited Fortnum and Masons, and I did a whole load of stuff. So I am constantly looking at high quality sort of photography. I photograph my son's basketball. I photograph landscape, and 95% of it is on my phone. So I have a phone with a very 250 gig memory. I got the Google Pixel 7, if it's okay to state that. Before that, I had a Huawei, which had a Leica camera, and Leica is the Rolls Royce of
Oh,
cameras.
yeah.
So my decisions around phone are how good is the camera. So that's the technology I can't do without, because I'm constantly, as my partner will say, I am constantly taking bloody photographs. It's sort of ingrained in me from art college.
Yeah, well, that's a good practical use of technology as well. You've
Yeah.
worked out what you want to use it for, and you get the best tool for the job, and you're happy with it. And that's
Yes.
what tech should be about. Um,
Yes.
so we talked a bit about Next, that that you were saying we're doing some really great stuff. But what other retailers do you admire?
Right. Cool. This could be a long list. The one that always springs to mind for me is Lush. Um, I find that their Oxford Street flagship store, I think, is probably the best store in the world I've ever visited, and I've visited a lot. Um, what I love is if you had a checklist of the top 10 things you should do in retail, they do the lot. The one thing that primarily stands out to me, though, is their staff. They have the best staff I've ever seen, and I've seen their stores in Asia and North America and across Europe, and there is a uniformity to how friendly, engaged, well informed and supportive their store staff are. They're fun and vibrant, but their strong ethical and sustainable background has now come to home to roost. We're all thinking about this, and they and Patagonia and Body Shop were decades ahead of this before it was trendy. The way they merchandise their product, this is soap and it's presented on beds of ice. I took two directors from Nestle around a few years ago, and they were like, wow, we can't even merchandise food like this, and they're doing it with soap, which is beautiful. Their messaging, their lighting, the product presentation. You look at it all and it's like, yes, tick, 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 tick. They do it all. Another one that I love is Rafa, the high-end cycle clothing company. They're probably one of the best retailers at building a sense of community. So people love the brand, and they call their stores clubhouses rather than shops. They have local rides. They have a coffee shop, which is a focal point. A lot of people put coffee shops in their retail environments, but there's a disconnect a lot of the time because people may just come in and have a coffee and leave, and all you're doing is sharing your revenue with a coffee brand. Whereas cycling and coffee shops are intertwined culturally. You go for your Sunday morning bike ride, you stop at a big pint of tea and a slice of cake, and you carry on. So it fits their brand, and people will be in there for like all day doing Zoom calls and having a coffee. So they do that particularly well, and I just love the way that they sell clothes, but you go in and it doesn't feel like it's about selling clothing. It's about being part of the community, and the way they build it is beautifully done as well. So those two particularly sort of stand out for me in the way they do things. I admire the Fraser Group, which is Mike Ashley's business, and I know he's a very contentious character, but I love the way that they are investing and growing and evolving. The Sports Direct stores used to these hideous, overstocked car boot sales, and they're now a lot more sophisticated, and they're constantly moving things forward. They opened this new concept called the Elevation Concept 18 months ago, 2 years ago, in Oxford Street. You now go back in, there's a new bit added and a new one. They've just opened their Manchester store, and there's real innovation. Tap this little disc, and your phone takes you to various web links. You can personalize things and download it to your phone. There's even a map because it's 5 floors, QR code, and you have an interactive map on your phone. So I love to see how brands like that don't rest on their laurels. So they're three that probably spring to mind at the moment.
Sports Direct one, I'm not surprised, but when you think to their business model, when they gained all the ground and they smashed all the other sports stores, destroying most of them in the process, by the pile it up, sell it cheap kind of philosophy, the
Yeah.
huge 90% off sales of ridiculous RRPs. And now you do look at their stores and you think they are pretty stylish. The clothes, they really have taken the word elevation and gone from one extreme to the other, and you have to
Yes.
admire that in terms of
Yeah.
progress.
I agree. And what's interesting as well is they have a number of sub brands, your USC, Evans Cycles, and interestingly, Game as well. And when I first saw it, I was a bit like, oh, that's unusual. It's gaming. But then you realize it's the same target audience. So while it's a different category, it's the same audience. And you go into that space, and there's this beautiful darkened gaming room, and each store has their own logo and their own name and identity, so you can go online and you can compete against people from the Birmingham store, against the Manchester store, and they're moving things forward. And as a group, they bought House Fraser. They're closing some of those stores, but they're now introducing their own Fraser department stores. You have the flannel stores, which are stunning high-end department stores with a policy of placing those in sort of secondary towns and cities where Harvey Nichols Selfridges wouldn't go to, and they've recognized there's this young audience with high disposable income that want high-end fashion brands, and so those flannel stores are just beautiful spaces. So yeah, it's a fascinating business, and it's interesting to see. I'd say then them and Next are probably the two most progressive, acquisitive businesses. They're both buying up other businesses. They're getting an economy of scale, I suppose a little bit like Volkswagen done in the car market. You end up having wonderful economy of scale because you have these multiple operations, and you can, you can centralize certain things, and you can create stores. I mean, some of their big Sports Direct stores have 4 or 5 different sub brands within them, which works really effectively as well.
So, it's been so interesting today. I genuinely am going to watch this back myself because there's so many stats and facts that you've given me that I just would never have guessed. So, thank you for that.
No, my pleasure.
And I guess if anyone's watching this now and they think this guy's interesting, I'm in retail or in some kind of bricks and mortar environment.
Mm.
I'd like him to, I'd like to get involved with him and to find out what he could do. What would be the kind of things that, if someone gets in touch with you, what are the easy kind of touch points for you to start trying to help people and to show them the value that you would bring?
Well, certainly. I mean, I suppose one of the obvious things is the advantage of an independent outside person is that the ability to look at it fresh. It was like that King's new clothes sort of fable of to go, well, why are you doing this? I know, having run my own business before, sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees when it's your own business. So the ability for someone to stand back and look at it with a fresh pair of eyes is quite useful. So with a lot of the times I will go, okay, let's go and have a look at what you're doing at the moment. And I do sort of store audits. I'll speak to the staff. One of the most important things, these people live and breathe your space 8 hours a day. They can go, oh, people are always coming in asking for this. They can't see it, even though it's only over there. And you go, okay, you may have an issue with your wayfinding here. No one goes upstairs. They think it's the store cupboard. Okay, we need to do some encouragement, lighting, direction, train the staff. But also, as well as my subjective opinion, I can also scan imagery and analyze it, heat map the key focal points, and accurately predict the order that people will look at things. So we can add a little bit of science to the observation. And then also what's useful is to go and look at competitors to see what they're doing, but also like when I run my retail safaris and take people around interesting stores, I don't think about the sector and the product. It's about the interesting application. And if you're a market leader in your sector, why go and analyze the people in your sector who are behind you? That's not it's worth sense checking what they're doing to keep an eye on them. But if you want inspiration, go and if you're sitting there in technology, go and look at what Nike are doing or what Burberry's are doing, because they may be doing something that's really interesting, that's bog standard in fashion, but could be massively innovative in your world. They've proven that it works in retail. So you can take that, introduce it to you are suddenly market leading pioneers in your sector. But good old Burberry or Nike have tested it for you and done all the hard work of bringing it to market, and you can take it and apply it. So I deliberately push people into sectors they're not interested in, because it's not about that. It's about the great staff, it's about the messaging, it's their sustainability, it's how they merge their technology into a physical space. So those things are really useful. And then it's about how you can look at developing your ideas. And if an external person challenging, I'm not a designer, I don't design things, but I went to art college, I worked for design agencies, I understand and know the process, but I can offer that external view to help you sense check what's going on and where it's going as well.
What I'd like to say is thanks for coming on today. It's truly been really interesting for me, and I love a walk around the shops, but I will definitely be doing it in a different frame of mind from now on. And I'd just like to thank you for your time. And if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I would implore them to do so, because you've clearly got lots of things that could help people. And thanks for your time again.
Thank you very much, James. I would say if anyone wants to get in touch with me, probably the best thing to do is find me on LinkedIn as Ian Scott. I post an awful lot on LinkedIn. It will give people an idea of what I think and my thoughts and viewpoints. And obviously people can get in touch there as well.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Ian. Bye-bye.
Thanks, James.